Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani is on a two-day official visit to India following an invite by PM Modi. The PM held talks with the leader of Qatar at the Hyderabad House in New Delhi. In a bid to strengthen bilateral ties, India and Qatar inked two key memorandums of understanding, in fact, on Tuesday. The agreement signed in the presence of Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal and the Emir of Qatar are set to strengthen cooperation between the two nations across various sectors. Now, the Emir of Qatar received a ceremonial welcome at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. He will be holding talks with PM Modi at the Hyderabad House. He will also be meeting with President Draupadi Murmu in the evening. Earlier, extending a rare gesture of hospitality, PM Modi went down to the airport to, in fact, receive the Emir of Qatar, who arrived in Delhi on Monday evening. All passengers and crew survived after a plane crash at Canada's Toronto Pearson International Airport. The Delta Airlines flight with 80 people on board, in fact, from Minneapolis, ended upside down on the runway with 3 people getting critically injured. Listen in.
Three of our stations in the airport operating area responded with 8 aircraft fire and rescue apparatus, plus Mississauga Fire and Emergency Services quickly responded with 6 engines, 2 district chiefs, a command vehicle, and a tanker. Peel Regional Paramedic Services responded with 18 paramedic units. Upon arrival, my team conducted fire suppression. Self-evacuation was already taking place. At this time, we believe all our emergency response went as planned. We will, however, be conducting a review. This is an active investigation. It's very early on. It's really important that we do not speculate.
The United States and Russia have confirmed that their top delegates will meet in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday to discuss ending the war in Ukraine, in a move that has sparked concern amongst European leaders left out, in fact, of the US-led effort. Senior US and Russian officials will hold talks in Riyadh in an effort to lay the groundwork for peace talks. The confirmation comes just days after US President Donald Trump said he and Putin had in fact agreed in a phone call to begin negotiations to end the ongoing war, which will hit the 3-year mark later this month. However, Trump's push for bilateral talks with Moscow has raised alarm bells about what place Ukraine and its European allies would have at the negotiating table. Listen to what Ukraine's president had to say.
Що Україна може дати питання, а що Україна може отримати. Тобто це ж дуже важливо для нас. Ми дійсно дуже зацікавлені в тому, щоб підписати угоду зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. І як першою. І я вже це говорив, і від американських партнерів. У нас є пропозиції від Європи, але всі європейці вони знають, що Сполучені Штати найбільший був стратегічний, є стратегічні партнери, тому ми відкриті для цього. І я президенту Трампу говорив, ми хочемо підписати.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's UN Deputy Ambassador said Monday, rather, she reaffirmed the country's stance as the momentum grows for potential peace talks ending Russia's war. Speaking at the UN Security Council emergency meeting on Ukraine, in fact, she said, and I quote, Russia needs to hold its end of the bargain when it came to any agreements. Meanwhile, European leaders are insisting their governments must also have a say in the talks between the US and Russia to end the war in Ukraine. Now this, as both Moscow and Washington said, there was no role for Europe in the negotiations that could shape the future of the continent. Listen in.
Weak agreements will not bring real peace. They will only lead to the greater war. That is why we are working with our partners to find strong and effective solutions. Peace cannot be bought, especially not at the expense of law and principles, especially principle of territorial integrity and sovereign equality. Peace cannot be replaced with appeasement. History offers many relevant examples. Our task is to avoid repeating past mistakes, as the cost of those mistakes is more blood, suffering, and destruction.
European leaders have insisted their governments must have a say in talks between the US and Russia to end the war in Ukraine. Now this, as both Moscow and Washington said, there was no role for Europe in the negotiations that could shape the future of the continent. The leaders of Germany, UK, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, Denmark, NATO, and even the European Union held emergency talks in Paris on Europe's security quandary. The French president called the meeting after a US diplomatic blitz on Ukraine threw a once solid alliance into turmoil. The UK called for US backing while reaffirming its readiness to consider, in fact, sending British forces to Ukraine alongside others if there is a lasting peace agreement, they said. Iran said that US and Israeli threats against it were a blatant violation of international law and that they could not do a damn thing to hurt Tehran. The comments came after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem on Sunday and said their countries were determined to thwart Iran's nuclear ambitions and its influence on West Asia. Protesters against President Donald Trump and his policies braved frigid temperatures in parts of the US on Monday, shouting "No Kings" on President's Day in East Coast cities and even attempting to enter the Arizona State House to oppose a bill that would in fact bolster fast-changing federal immigration enforcement. Over in California, local media outlets reported on hundreds of protesters in fact carrying out "Not My President's Day" protests. The No Kings theme was orchestrated by the 50510 movement and marked the second set of protests crisscrossing the nation in less than 2 weeks. At the state capitol, large crowds gathered to voice opposition to Trump administration policies. And South Africa could in fact turn to Russia or Iran to expand its civilian nuclear power capacity, a senior government minister has underlined. This is the stance that analysts say could deepen a rift between the US and delay further the renewal of a strategic energy pact. South Africa, which operates Africa's only nuclear power plant, Coburg, plans to add 2,500 megawatts of new capacity to tackle electricity outages that have plagued the economy, as well as to reduce carbon emissions. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, is seeking to access to troves of sensitive taxpayer data at the IRS. Two people familiar with the inner workings of the plan, who were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly, told the AP on Monday. Now, if successful, Musk and his group would have access to millions of tightly controlled files that include taxpayer information, bank records, and other sensitive records. The people who spoke to the AP and requested anonymity said DOGE is specifically seeking to access the IRS's integrated data retrieval system, which enables employees in turn to have instantaneous visual access to certain taxpayer accounts. Now, this is according to the IRS website. Meanwhile, the city of Rio de Janeiro reached a record temperature of 44 degrees Celsius on Monday. According to city officials, it's the highest temperature recorded since the climate alert system, in fact, started over 10 years ago. The second highest was 43.8 degrees in November 2023. Authorities have issued an alert, in fact, for the extreme heat in the coming days and have also activated a plan that includes cooling and hydration stations across the city and preparations, in fact, for the municipal health system to handle an increase in heat-related cases. Amidst scorching temperatures, Rio's residents and tourists sought relief, packing the city's beaches during the weekend, cooling off in the ocean and under public showers.